Hi everybody and welcome to your latest episode of GTA Fancast with me, Gully, on the Wolves Fancast YouTube channel. Slight change of tack here. I won't be doing a match review of the Chorley game. I'm sure you're all pleased to hear about that one. But we've reached a halfway point of the season in terms of league games. So I'm going to have a look back at the last 19 games, and I've picked out 5 phases of play in particular which I want to focus on, where Wolves could probably be considered to be at their best, and I just want to see what kind of trends we can pick out from them, and if we can take this into the rest of the season and hopefully see our form pick up, which I'm sure we'd all like to happen as soon as possible. So we're going to go right the way back to the opening day of the season, and how long ago does that feel? It was all so fresh, so new. We had Nuno's comments about a new style of play ringing in our ears. And after all the talk of Wolves being a second half team, we decided to go 2-0 up against Sheffield United within the first 6 minutes of the game. Now, it was all, obviously based upon the idea that we have changed the way we're playing, but we were still very much a strict kind of 3-5-2, really, rather than a 3-4-3. But the sight of Neto, Podence and Jimenez kind of linking up in particular was really, really exciting. Neto starting from a slightly deeper, almost midfield position. But at the same time, I think what was really refreshing to see was that we were dominating possession, quite happy to kind of recycle the ball in deeper areas of the pitch. But once we had the opportunity, you can see quite obviously that there were lots of direct balls into the strikers. And in particular, this game really highlighted how important Raul Jimenez was to the way we play. I say was, obviously not expecting to see him for the rest of this season, but just simply having a striker out there to hit with these longer balls and to play off, really, really exciting. And I think if you have a look at the number of touches and the involvement of a striker within a game, very rare that it's the case that they are the kind of most prevalent player from that perspective. But if I show you just from the Wolves' perspective on this one, Raul Jimenez comes out on top in terms of touches across the 90 minutes, which is almost unheard of, really, in terms of the way that many teams play in the modern era. Lots of possession in deeper parts of the pitch. But the other thing I wanted to point out was how good we were at kind of stopping Sheffield United from playing. Like I said, we monopolised possession really in that first 25-minute spell. But you can see straight away when you have a look at Sheffield United trying to advance towards our goal, very little going on in the middle of the pitch. I think we allowed teams to kind of get down the flanks, but at the same time, a lot stiffer. And that Dendoncker, Moutinho and Neto kind of tucking in as and when required was very useful in that fixture in particular. So really good start to the season, obviously, and I think there's a few things from that we can take going forward. So the second phase of play I'd like to focus on was the 2-0 win against Crystal Palace, and in particular the first half an hour. Again, really good high tempo start to the game, looking to attack teams from the off, which was again a change of tack from last season's methods, but something slightly more traditional about the way we went about taking on Palace this time was the use of our wing backs. And if we remember, Ryan Nuri getting on the score sheet from left wing back was a really pleasing thing to see. And Nelson Semedo playing a decent ball into the channel for Neto to cross, and Podence getting on the end of that one. So real good use of the wing backs, and a lot of this had to do with Connor Cody, again instrumental over the years with Nuno with his passing and getting those players into the game and showing that nice range either side to get those guys onto the ball. Again, it might have had something to do with the fact that we were playing against a team playing 4-4-2, and those wing backs kind of operating in between the space that a fullback and a winger might occupy, and being a little bit hard to mark, especially with the kind of wider forwards occupying narrower positions and kind of leaving that those defenders especially kind of umming and ahhing about where to go and pick up. But a really good kind of performance in that first half an hour, and again, good possession of the ball and stopping Crystal Palace from playing through that middle of the pitch. I think we really seem to work well when we have that kind of double parallel kind of pivot in the centre of the pitch, whether it be when we're playing with a back four system or a back three system. So another good showing from the early part of the season, and I think it was a lot more exciting, especially to see the way that Podence, Neto were having an impact on those games as well. Phase of play number 3 is what many would consider kind of the turning point in our season, although it was still a highlight in terms of the 90-minute performance itself. It's the game against Arsenal. Now, basically right off the presence of Raul Jimenez in this game altogether, we did so incredibly well to kind of come back from that moment and win this game. And if we look at the first 45 minutes in particular, you can see how well we've done defensively for a start, restricted them to one shot on target. And this was now a team that had transitioned to a back four for the time being, really. And we still managed to show that kind of defensive solidity. So I think it proves the fact that a lot of what's maybe happening to us at the moment isn't necessarily to do with the shape. It's a lot of around defensive areas, bad mistakes, bad decision making. Because if I show you Arsenal's pass map, you can see there's a real chasm kind of in the middle of the park in terms of them not actually playing any passes in certain areas of the pitch. And in the other half of the pitch, we were really quite rampant at times in terms of getting Traore, Neto and Podence on the ball plenty. All three of them in tandem were going to pose a threat to that Arsenal team, who were in a bad run of form at the time as well. But the other promising thing I found was that there was a relationship. If you think about with a back four system, fullbacks and wingers tend to kind of over the history of football be really kind of key parts of teams going forward. You think about pairings and the great sides like United in 1999, David Beckham and Gary Neville just as an example of that. Marçal and Neto tend to kind of work really well together, lots of passes between them, and they both had a really good game on this occasion. And you can see a partnership developing there, but I think the real key was absolutely stopping Arsenal from really creating anything through that kind of central midfield pivot again, and having a number 10 on the pitch in Daniel Podence with Neto and Traore all there to pose a real threat going forward as well. Now, the full spell I wanted to pick out was the second half of our really, really important and late victory against Chelsea. I think we, especially for certain parts of this game, we weren't necessarily at our best. We just reverted back to our back three system, which took away certain parts of our game in an attacking sense for sure. And we weren't absolutely firing on all cylinders and creating lots and lots of chances. But what we did do, which is very much like the Nuno teams of old, especially last season, was keep ourselves in the game. We even conceded early on in the second half, and then built on the platform that we kind of given ourselves in the first half with a really good second half display. And if you have a look at what Chelsea managed to do within our own penalty area, very, very little happening for them in that part of the pitch. And it shows that we had a real good spell of dominance in the second half in particular. Ruben Neves, absolutely key to all of this, picking up loose balls and playing quite a lot of his football in the opposition half as well. I think when he plays in that 3-4-3 system, there is a bit more of an onus to play a little bit higher with the back four. I think he has a bit more of a responsibility to protect. But with the added insurance of a third centre half, I think he can play a little bit higher at the pitch. And on this occasion, he was really, really influential in moving the ball, progressing it into the final third, and getting the ball into players like Podence and Neto, who obviously went on to win the game for us. So really, really good to see that we were able to kind of call on a lot of the traits of last season at the kind of drop of a hat, especially when we needed a result, and that turned out to be a pretty big one. Now, the fifth and final phase I'd like to have a look at is the second half against Tottenham. Now, this was probably the most complete kind of 90 minutes I think we've produced over the course of this season, but with the caveat that we did obviously go down 1-0 at a very, very early stage in the game. And at this point, Tottenham were very much looking to go ahead and protect what they have. So caveat that Tottenham were allowing us to play, but we were still very good in terms of actually breaking the lines and progressing the ball up the field. If you have a look at how much we actually got the ball into the attacking third, really heavy kind of touches in the wide areas in particular. Again, part of Tottenham's plan maybe, but we still used kind of those really effective dribblers to kind of take people out of the game by breaking the lines there with Neto, Podence, Traore again, all in tandem, working really well and posing a lot of a threat. We may have done a little bit more if it wasn't Fabio Silva kind of leading the line that day, and he still had a couple of chances to score, but We could have produced more, I think, in the final third on that occasion. So many crosses flashing into the box as well. And good to see that Nelson Semedo was really heavily involved on that day as well. I think he showed kind of his technical proficiency and how he is an upgrade on Doherty in many ways in that fixture. And Ruben Neves, again, what I like to see from him is when he's making interceptions and he's making tackles. I think when he's got that part of his game right, the rest of it comes so much more naturally to him. And he can look a little bit lost when he's not reading the game properly on occasion. And I think, such as the West Brom game, where he didn't do too well from that perspective in protecting his back four, I think he really suffered as a result. But on this occasion, he was really good. So again, a positive result really, a draw against Tottenham, maybe more we could have taken from that performance, but at the same time, lots and lots of positives really for, our attacking play and showing that we can hurt teams without necessarily the end product that we would have liked. So what can we take from all of these kind of positive performances? I think the first thing that is absolutely 100% clear is that we are missing Daniel Podence. I think he's gone on to show in all of those performances, especially, he's been at the heart of them all, and he, is the kind of more unique player when it comes to our attacking play. He fills that number 10 position in particular really well, and he links so much of what's going on in the final third together and just knits it nicely. He might not even, come out with the most assists and goals, but I think he allows Neto, Traore and one other to kind of really exploit everything else that goes on around that final third of the pitch. So really need to get him back up to speed as soon as possible. The last game he started was that game against Tottenham that I mentioned, and it's clear that our form has fallen off a bit of a cliff since then. And it's strange to think that number 10 position can kind of impact things going backwards. But the other thing that I think is related to that is that in the absence of Podence, Nuno doesn't necessarily seem too comfortable with playing with a natural number 10. And that's changed the shape of our midfield to be more of a kind of number 6, as they say, a deeper sitting midfielder and two kind of box-to-box midfielders either side of them. Now, what I think we've proven in that and in the analysis in the video so far is that we're much more comfortable with that kind of double pivot, whether it be two deeper sitting midfielders in a back 3 system or in the back 4 system as well. Just gives us a little bit more structure, and I've shown in the videos up until this point, the graphics, that a lot of those teams really struggle to build play through the middle of the pitch, and that little bit of extra protection just goes a long way to helping our back 4, which isn't necessarily the strongest in the centre of defence. I think individually they're not necessarily the best, but when they've got a bit more structure around them, I think they're more than competent in terms of preventing teams from scoring goals and creating chances against us. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out was in that double pivot, at the moment, it has to be Dendoncker +1. I think we've shown that, we've said this on the podcast a number of times, we need a bit more of that physical prowess in the centre of the pitch. The other player that was worth mentioning again in that Chelsea second half was Owen Otasawi, who came on for Dendoncker when he picked up an injury and fulfilled that role really well, when it's turned out to be Neves and Moutinho. Aside from that Tottenham game, which obviously was much more about being in possession of the ball, we just don't seem to stop teams from getting at our defence. And, I think at the moment, in particular, it has to be Neves alongside Dendoncker. Moutinho just doesn't seem to be quite at it. And Neves, when on top form, as he's shown in some of these phases in these games as well, he's really good and important in terms of ball progression. He can still do all of that work without necessarily having Moutinho alongside him as well. So really important to stress that. And finally, I mean, if he wasn't made of Teflon, I think, we'd be singing the praises of Fernando Marçal as well, and really kind of praising him for the way he stepped into Johnny's shoes. He's gone on to show he's a very unfussy defender, tidy in possession, built up a good relationship with Neto in some of these games as well. And, is a real sound defensive footballer. I think, he came with an injury record, which he's gone on to prove. And that's disappointing to see. But if he'd been available for all of these fixtures, I think we would have been, a lot less susceptible to conceding some of the late goals, physically a bit more sturdy, and just to have a little bit more of a consistent lineup and performance level that will would have stood us in a lot more good stead. And hopefully, once he gets over this operation that he's had, he can have a run of games towards the back end of this season, and we'll be a lot better for it. But you can see straight away that Nuno's, he's tearing his hair out with toying with systems and shape. And I think we've proven in this kind of video that it's not necessarily whether we play a back three or a back four at the moment. The midfield shape isn't necessarily helping us, but the rest of it is just coming down to bad mistakes, which lead to bad results, which leads to confidence dropping, and a lot of a lack of assuredness around the team at the moment, which hopefully will go on to change a little bit now. I think we will probably start to go back to a back three, just to be a little bit more sturdy and compact in defence. But I think I've also shown that we're a much better side when we play with a natural striker. When we've got Neto, Podence and Adama on the pitch at the same time, with a natural striker in front of them, we've been really, really good in attacking areas for sure. So, Willian Jose, it's over to you, mate, and hopefully you can make a much more of a difference, and without, kind of even knowing, get at both ends of the pitch. So, hopefully I've cheered you guys up a little bit in terms of showing that we haven't been as bad as we feel at the moment, in particular given the run of form that we've had. But a lot of these games have been lost on kind of fine margins, and obviously Nuno's suffering a lot with his injuries, with a lack of a consistent lineup, etc. So hopefully we'll get back into a run of form with a more consistent lineup, more consistent setup, and show that we are a more than competent Premier League side. So like, subscribe, let me know your thoughts, guys, and we'll be back for more next week.